Get that power back. Take control of how you interact with the world, and a lot of good things can open up.
Welcome to Bullhorns and Bullseyes, the podcast where precision meets promotion. I'm Tom Nixon.
And I'm Curtis Hayes.
We're thrilled to have you join us as we discuss the ever-evolving world of sales and marketing. Every week, Curtis and I bring our own specific experiences and expertise, along with a special guest who has stories to tell and lessons learned to share. We're here to help you with strategies that hit the mark and amplify the marketing. Before we kick off today's episode, make sure to hit that subscribe button to stay in the loop. And if you find our discussions on target, leave us a review. Your feedback means a lot to us. Now get ready for insights, tips, and conversations that will up your marketing game. It's Bullhorns and Bullseyes with Curtis Hayes and Tom Nixon. Let's ride. Welcome back, everyone, to Bullhorns and Bullseyes. Curtis, I think a little housekeeping is in order before we bring on today's guest, because I believe this is episode 33 of season 1, and we should tell people we're sort of rounding into the home stretch here. Why don't you share with everyone what our plans are for the culmination of season 1?
Good idea. Yeah, I can field this one for sure. So, yes, it's been about a year since we started this, at least recorded episode 1. It was a little bit later that we actually launched that episode. And I think it's smart always, in whatever you're doing, to take a break. You know, the golf season, by the end of the summer, maybe you've had enough and it's like, okay, winter's coming. It's time to take a break. I'll recharge. You know, baseball doesn't go all year long. They still play 84 games?
62, yeah.
162. Oh, unless you're in the playoffs.
True. But we're in Detroit. We don't remember what that's like.
This is true. So I think it's good to take a break. So what we're going to try to do is finish up with 40 episodes. I know we've got one bonus episode in there that'll take it to 41. I'd like to close out with our original guest, Mario, and I've asked Mario to come on in our second to last episode. And then number 40, you and I will kind of close everything out. And maybe by that time, we'll have some idea of what season 2 might look like. And I'm interested in doing season 2. I think I formally asked you if you were interested.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just glad to have a job for sure.
Yeah, we're making loads of money doing this, aren't we?
Exactly. Yes.
I'm going to stop my day job.
Well, the other thing we think is important to do is also to recheck in on your marketing efforts, whatever it is. And so that's a good reason and excuse to bring Mario back, because he's kind of a master in doing that, is stopping, evaluating where we've been, and then what are the wins, and then what are the projected wins going forward. So
yep, it'll have been a year since he was on. And so what's he been working on this last year? How have things been progressing? And we've been working on some new stuff with him, a lot of which he's learned and we've learned from guests that have been on the podcast.
True.
So I think it'll be interesting to kind of tie those things together and what we've been putting into practice. And I think there's a lot in future for Mario as well, things we're working on. So it'd be fun to address that as well.
Well, getting in just under the wire before we close out season 1 is today's guest. Somebody you've worked with in the past. Why don't you invite him on?
Yeah, so I'm excited to welcome Chris Jimenez. Chris was a project manager a long time ago, about probably 16 years ago. I met Chris and came on to an organization I was with and spent some time with us, helping us with project management on the web development side, trying to improve some of our processes and those types of things. And then I think you went back to the previous company you were with prior to us hiring up. We stole you. And they were like, oh, crap, we just lost a really good employee and they wanted you back. So they got you back, which sad we lost you, but happy for you. And I think in that time you sort of moved from project management to some organizational development and operations and those types of things. But now you're doing something completely different, Chris. And I want you to talk a little bit about that journey. I reconnected. Well, we've been connected on LinkedIn, but you posted some interesting stuff lately that you're kind of in a new career and you've got your own coaching business, which I get excited about because I love seeing these professionals sort of transform out of being employees into starting their own business and doing consulting and helping other people. So Yeah, tell us a little bit about that journey and what you're doing right now, Chris.
Yeah, thanks, Curtis, and thanks, Tom, for having me on with you. It's really an honor. Happy to expand on that. You did a great job, though, summarizing it. Yeah, right now I'm actually in the coaching space, so working on career coaching and executive coaching. So my business is called Alter Orbit Coaching, and the purpose of that is really I've seen so many in my career that kind of get stuck. That are in this pattern of going to work and just accepting what's happening to them, and really it starts to reduce their potential for happiness. They don't really quite understand why it's not going the way they need it to go, but they're just they just want help. And in my career, I've spent a lot of time working with people on the side, both officially as an HR person, but also just as being a friend to people at the office who are looking for help with cultural situations, just wanting to be heard once in a while. So Alter Orbit was created to help them break free of those patterns where they just kind of accept what's given to them. And ultimately, I mean, have a really great career until they get to the point where they're ready to retire instead of just surviving to retire.
Yeah, that's great. We had a recent episode, didn't we, Tom? We were talking actually with Franco. We were on Franco's podcast, and we were talking about the need for a mentor, the need for a coach. Whether you're in sales or marketing, or you're in any other career, it's good to have some peers who hold you accountable, a coach who can help you grow. So this is, pretty awesome what you're doing, Chris, to take the 20 plus years experience that you have that you can pass on to people and help them grow.
Yeah, thanks, Curtis. I'm excited. I'm definitely excited to be in this new chapter of my life and really help people who didn't have that ally before.
Yeah.
Speaking of Franco, Curtis, so when we had the Franco folks on the podcast, I shared that I kind of cut my teeth at Franco, not exactly my first job in this career, but close to it. And I'll never forget one of the very first meetings that the president, CEO of the company brought me to, and it was a new business pitch. And I was nervous, of course. I was so junior and green, and I'm a natural introvert, as I told people many times on this podcast. And so I went there with the intent of just taking really good notes. That was one thing I knew I was good at, even if I wasn't sure what I was good at yet in marketing and PR and everything that my career would become. But I was going to take really good notes. So I sat in this meeting and I think to myself, no one's going to care what I have to say, right? So I'm going to keep my mouth shut, stay out of the way, and I'm not going to blow this new business pitch for my boss. And she's so smart, and she's got these people eating out of the palm of her hands, and meeting goes good. At one point, I think somebody asked me a question as if, I was supposed to have any sort of insights, which I didn't feel like I had. Don't remember how I answered it. But I remember in the car ride going home, Chris, my boss at the time says, Tom, something you need to work on is becoming an active listener. And I thought to myself, active listener? I was taking so many freaking notes. I could off the top of my head tell you verbatim what people said in this meeting. I was listening so intently, but I'm getting called out on this ride home for something that I thought I was doing. So it stuck with me to that day. Like, what was I doing wrong? What's active listening? And so why don't you, because we want to cover that topic today, active listening in the role it plays in sales and marketing. What was I doing wrong? And what did she mean by active listening in your view?
Yeah, I think especially when you're in a new situation like that, taking copious notes is pretty important because you want to get it right, like you said. But with active listening, when you're taking so many notes and you're worried about getting it just right, you're not necessarily listening and being fully present for what's happening around you, right? So it's about reading the body language of a person saying something and saying, okay, when they gave you that direction, what were they doing? Were their arms crossed? Were they looking at the ceiling? Were they trying to look around the room to see who else might be nodding their heads? Like, okay, am I saying the safe thing in front of Tom? Those types of things can be difficult to pick up on when you're looking down at your notes. And you might have a really great transcript of everything that happened in that meeting. But to really understand what was said and also what was not said, being fully present is a big key part of that active listening skill.
Yeah. I happened to notice, Curtis, that as I was thinking back, I remember the boss, Lisa, she was always nodding her head and looking intently back at the person. And I was like, maybe I should have been done. I should have done that. But have you found yourself trying to understand or try to exercise what active listening is yourself?
Uh, Not intentionally, but I did this yesterday. So we had a meeting yesterday. We were doing some storytelling framework work with a client. And I said to Steph on the way to that meeting, I'm not taking my notebook. I'm not taking a computer. I'm not going to take notes. So we recorded the meeting in Teams. And then I said, your Otter is going to capture everything. So we're using this Otter AI tool that's transcribing everything, right? So it's like, what's the point of me taking notes? Just so I look like I'm paying attention? And I'm not a good note taker anyway. And so it was a little awkward for me feeling like, is the customer, because I don't have that in front of me. I mean, I literally walked into the room with nothing in my hand. No briefcase, no computer, no notepad, nothing. But I was fully engaged for the entire 90 minutes that we were in that meeting. I mean, you ran most of the meeting,
Well, what's
asked all the
interesting is
important questions, but I felt like I was fully engaged in that whole thing. And if I need to go back and reference anything, I've got the recording and I've got Otter.
and you've got my notes because I was taking
Right.
notes, and there was another
Stephanie was
person there.
taking notes.
Stephanie was
Yep.
taking notes. What was interesting though is you kind of got me out of a bind at one point. Not that I was stumbling, but I was kind of like wondering where to go next. And probably because you were so engaged, you took over the conversation at a certain point. I'm like, I was thinking to myself, oh, he's spot on here. This is great. So I noticed it without even noticing it. So Chris, is when we talk about active listening, so go back in the realm of like a sales pitch. So this
Mhm.
is maybe we're trying to win the business now. How does active listening affect whether or not we're doing an effective job in the sales and pitching and marketing process?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think when it comes down to being in that sales process, it's really about doing the best you can to put your own goals and targets off to the side. To really demonstrate active listening with somebody who is about to buy something from you, it's really about setting aside that agenda and making the person that you're sitting with make their agenda your agenda. I think it's a great way to practice. Even if you're not sure what to do, or you're thinking in the back of your head, the boss is going to make me hit this quota. I need to get this sale, or else I'm in trouble. You're probably going to be better off getting that sale if you're actually there in the room, listening to what they're saying, and more importantly, like I said before, listening to what they're not saying. Are they afraid of something? Are they worried about the business closing? Are they concerned that the customers coming through are bringing up something they can't solve and they just want you to solve it for them? You really have to really zone in on the language being used and the overall kind of it's the vibe that you're feeling in that space, because really they might be exuding fear, they might be exuding pressure that they're feeling, they might be worried about making their next mortgage payment. And if you're going in there thinking about, well, if I don't hit this target, I'm not going to get my bonus, the two of you will never connect. And as a result of that, the odds of closing that sale go down. We're all really just people trying to make it through the world right now. There's a lot on our plates, and we all have our objectives, but the more that we can connect genuinely and have that authenticity together, the better outcomes from both parties.
Tom, this reminds me of two previous conversations we had. One, Dave Tier, we
Mhm,
talked about mirroring and matching.
mhm.
And if so, making somebody feel comfortable with you on the other end of the table, if I pick up my cup and take a drink, and you pick up your cup and take a drink, that's the mirroring and matching. And you can't do that if you're not paying attention to the other person, like what you're saying, Chris. Like you can't, how if your head's down taking notes, whatever, you're not actively engaged with that person. There's no opportunity for you guys to feel comfortable with each other in that conversation. And then the other conversation we had was with Kate, and discussing Kate Simon, who's the real estate sales agent, of just like putting yourself in the position of where that customer or that buyer is at, right? And relating to them in that situation. Are they in a worry state right now? Are they in a state where they're not even ready to buy, but you're just trying to push the sale again, to meet a quota, like you said, Chris, right? So understanding that you have to be an active listener in order to know where that person's actually at in their journey.
Well, and that's the thing. There's many different famous quotes about things like that where people won't remember what you did, but they'll remember how you made them feel.
Hmm.
That's not only for HR people, that's not only for a manager and employee. That's something that's actually really important in this world, especially with how transactional everything is right now. Netflix is going to take their $25 out of your account every single month, and they're not going to know your name. They don't even care about you. So, as a salesperson, connecting with another human being in a world where everything is so automated and transactional, you have an opportunity to change the way a person feels about you, your product, your company, really, even maybe even just giving them hope about the fact that salesmen actually still care. Those are types of things that I think are really important in today's time where distance and um, really almost kind of just being forgotten, like people just constantly in your wallet taking money out. And it's that human connection and making someone feel seen and heard is very important, no matter who you're working with. It doesn't matter if it's the most junior person in that company or the CEO, they should all be treated the same. They're human beings trying to make it through the world.
Yeah. You emphasize the difference between seeking to be heard and seeking to be or to mutually understand. So here's another one of my favorite quotes by I think it was a Greek philosopher Epictetus who said we have two ears and one mouth so that we listen twice as much as we speak. Are you a believer that in sales the salesperson who says the least wins the most?
I am. I am because it's just how we're wired. I mean, we go through our days. Um, Everyone, so imagine this. Everyone in today's society, you look at social media, for example, everyone's yelling, right? Like we're all kind of yelling things, but we don't yell like important things. It's just yelling two sentences at a time and then walking away. And because everybody's so easily able to talk now, the idea of being heard and understood is just kind of almost like inherent. Well, oh yeah, well everyone's out there, everyone's talking, it's all fine. No, it's more like a person walks into a room, screams two sentences, and then walks out of the room. And the next person walks in and screams two sentences, walks out of the room. There's not a conversation. And because of that, things that we used to take for granted in having a community and human interaction, now having that connection where you're sitting there and you're saying, "Hey, I'm here for you, customer. My pen is down, or maybe it's just ready to take some important notes, but I'm locked in on you. And as we talk, I'm going to give you something that you haven't felt all day long today. I'm going to be here for you." That's not something people feel anymore in the
Yeah.
course of their day. So a salesperson actually has a unique opportunity, more so than maybe any other role in a company, to come in and be that connection with another person and give them some love for a minute. And in the process, you're probably going to make that connection turn into a sale because it's just so rare.
This
Yeah.
sounds like Mario's company, Tom.
Mm.
So what we find interesting, Chris, in what you said, what I find interesting, and this anecdotal sort of data point that we've discovered over the last couple of years might be interesting to you, and that we've seen consumers from a lead gen sort of marketing perspective move away from filling out lead forms and chatbots on websites, which that was the push for many years. Like, let's get them to fill out a form or let's have a chatbot up on the website and it'll be easier and more convenient for that user. People are tired of that. They actually want to speak to a human being. And so
Right.
we've seen this drastic increase over the last year, 2 years. Maybe some of it was driven by the pandemic of us being sort of sheltered and whatnot. I'm sure there's a ton of psychology behind all of this that I have no insight to. But all I know is people want to pick up the phone and call our customers now. And so we're telling our
Wow.
customers, like, we've got to have placement of a phone number easily accessible on the website. We've got to make it easy for those prospects to call you. But at the same time, you have to have the people who are answering that phone show compassion, um, be prepared for what to expect because that volume is now increasing and we're pushing it that way. Make sure those people are all
Mhm.
properly trained, and then routing it internally to the right people. And where we see Mario winning when we just did some customer surveys is that their customers feel like they're being heard. and they're being
Yeah.
taken care of, right? So that compassion you're talking about, this is a very compassionate type business, and they're winning with that, right, Tom? I mean, you saw this in all your research.
Absolutely. And Chris, this goes back to, I think what you're saying is that people want to be heard, in typing into a autonomous and anonymous chatbot doesn't feel like you're being heard. It feels like you're being
Right.
triaged.
Exactly. It's just you're just being managed at that point, right? And I think right now with the trends in AI being what they are, I think people are starting to get a little nervous that human connection is just going to be a thing of the past. Like you can talk to your neighbors maybe, but if you are spending money and you need a problem solved, good luck. And I think that is an opportunity for sales, but also, and Curtis, you bring up a great point. When it comes to like even the call center side of things, right? So you have everybody set up. You're incentivizing people to call. You want them to feel like that's part of your offering is to be like, we're here for you. Now, the trap is to make sure that you're also not doing some kind of reward system internally in your call center that rewards them for being fast or rewards them for quickly getting through the decision tree. Like, this is a chance to slow down. Everybody just slow down. Money is harder to spend right now. So when somebody is spending money, take the time to listen, hear what they're saying, work through their problem, make sure they truly feel that they have a solution in hand and not, like I said earlier, being managed. Everyone's being managed in some way. You don't want to be managed while you're spending your own money. You want to have that support and feel like that it was worth it to invest in that company.
Yeah. Yeah, it's Curtis. It's something that dawned on me in a previous episode, which you'll remember, and I want to get Chris's take on this. Going back to the listening twice as much as you speak, neither Curtis nor I have a pitch deck. Like if somebody's called and made an appointment, said, "Walk us through your capabilities deck," I don't have that. And I don't have that for two reasons. And I want to get your take, Curtis. One is I have no idea what this person who needs to hear from me even has in terms of pain or their problem, or even if I can solve it. So if I just jump into, well, here's how I do this for other, here I do this, I'm totally missing the opportunity for them to be heard and for me to hear what is ailing them. And so I remember, Curtis, I said, I know it's not out of laziness that you don't have a deck, because I know you're not a lazy person. So explain again why you don't have a deck, and let's get Chris's take on whether we should, or the best way to present in a new business pitch.
Yeah, so I come from an IT background where I was a problem solver. I One of my first jobs was on a help desk. I suppose sort of naturally, maybe that was growing up with a couple sisters, um, and in an environment where we sort of had good communication in the family. Like I could relate and communicate with people, but I'm also a talker. I do have a hard time like not talking, but in help desk, like you're forced to ask questions, not
Mm,
necessarily about the person, which I wouldn't say I'm all that good at. Like you're good at asking questions, Tom, but you've been trained on it. Now you have
mm,
some skills naturally, but I've also been trained on it where like I'm just good at getting to like figuring out a problem or understanding something abstractly and asking questions to get down to something that can resolve it and doing it in a way that starts, and this was key in IT, is like, what's the simplest thing first?
mm.
Like, have you rebooted? Right? Like, let's start simple. If that doesn't
Right.
work, then we move to the next level up. But don't start with the most complicated solution potentially. Let's start simple and build our way up. And
Mhm.
so as I moved into the career that I'm in now, um, and this is also probably to a detriment in a way that like if I get a new sales call, it's a new prospect that I'm talking to, I have a tendency to want to solve that problem for them while I'm on the phone call with them, not
Mm,
bring them in as a customer, get them paying, and then try to solve the problem. So I probably do educate too much and provide too much information in the beginning, but I would say that probably helps close some business too because I'm earning trust and establishing a rapport by being transparent, by trying to understand their problem, maybe providing a few solutions or an idea of what a solution might look like before I'm bringing them into any sort of sales funnel, let's call it.
yeah. Yep. Chris, what are your thoughts on pitch decks and their relevance or importance in the sales process?
Yeah, I think it's a really great point that you both bring up with that. I think that pitch decks almost to me they seem like something that's just an expectation. Like it's almost like when you're doing business, you make a pitch deck. But then in the process, everyone's creating pitch decks that don't land, and they're so worried about getting their narrative out that it's not really even connecting with anyone. So you've delivered a pitch, but who cares?
Hmm.
Like the client's going to the next meeting and they've already kind of like, okay, I guess I'll deal with them later. To your point though, much like with coaching, I have no idea what a client is bringing forward when I answer the phone. I go in there and I say, hey, how's it going? What's on your mind today? And it could be literally anything. But when we get to the end of the session, we are able to make some progress because not only am I listening to them, but I'm asking open ended questions. I'm trying to learn the emotion behind the problem. And when we start to uncover that, and maybe they're bringing you in to work on something, we just got to get more leads. Okay. Well, why are getting more leads so important right now? Well, I mean, every company needs leads. Okay, well, okay, why do you need them this moment? They take a deep breath. They kind of realize they can come out of business mode for a minute and be a human being and be like, look, man, we really just need some help. My people are killing themselves trying to make this stuff work. I don't know what to tell them anymore to motivate them. I'm trying to get them to see that what they're doing is valuable, and I feel like I'm failing as a manager. Oh, okay. You feel like you're failing is a lot different than get me leads. So when you're working with people and you're trying to understand what's really going on, getting to the core emotion behind the problem by asking these questions where you're not making assumptions about what they need, but asking them, what do you need? How can I help you? And then who knows where that can go? I mean, they can start opening up to you about all kinds of things. And maybe it's even more stuff that's outside of your scope, but the reality is you're now connected. And the odds are that you're probably going to make a better transaction with them because of that genuine, authentic moment together.
Yeah. Just a little homework here. So grab a pen and paper to jot this down if you can, if you're not driving. But wonder if you heard of this one, Chris. So I was trained in Sandler sales, and the problem I come to realize about pitch decks is, and here's what you're going to Google: don't paint a seagull in your prospect's picture. You ever heard that one, Chris?
I had not. No.
So I'm not gonna. It's kind of a longer story, but it's a very effective, I think, real life story. If not, it's a parable. But go Google that. Don't paint a seagull in your client or your prospect's picture, because sometimes the point of it, just to share that, is that a lot of times you're presenting a solution when you have a deck, right? You're presenting solutions to a problem the prospect doesn't even have. So what's the first thing they think of? I'm not being heard. This person doesn't understand me.
Yes.
Can't even solve my problem. Even though it's possible and likely that you can, but the message that you're sending is they don't understand what I'm going through right now. Right. So,
Mhm.
all
I
right.
like that.
My last question, because we're actually running into time, is companies. So we're focusing on sales and marketing, but this listening is a skill that I think crosses all sorts of business functions. Curtis mentioned that I'm trained on it. I guess I'm trained on it or good on it or good at it. But here's my practical application, and I want to get your advice, Chris, for cross-functional listening. Is I have a list of 5 to 7 questions that are almost the same for every prospect meeting I take because they're very open-ended. The client
Mhm.
can interpret them like song lyrics any way they want, and it's just open-ended. Kind of tell us where it hurts. Kind of how you got to, I feel like I'm failing as a manager. If I have 5 to 7 questions that I'm committed to getting through, I don't have time to, paint the picture paint the seagull on the client's picture. So, what are companies losing out on when they're not embracing a culture of listening first? And are there some practical things you would recommend to our listeners to get this integrated into their company tomorrow? Sales and marketing, HR, whatever it might be.
Yeah, no, great question. I think there's two different approaches to this. So as an individual, I think there's a way to check how well you're listening by a little thing that I like to do on LinkedIn. So I'll start with that. One thing you can do If you're not sure if you're listening, you're reading the social cues going on around you, go scroll through your home feed on LinkedIn and look for posts that are almost laughably obvious, like toxic bosses are bad. Okay. You look for those and you see that they have tens of thousands of reactions, comments, everything. Now, maybe before I say this, you would have been like, okay, yeah, toxic bosses are bad. But what's important is to look at the person who's commenting on it. How did it get to your feed? People who are hurting use that as a method to be seen and heard.
Mm.
If you're grazing past it and you're like, more noise, no, Johnny is in trouble. Johnny's feeling pain. He's not probably being heard by his manager, probably not being respected by his teammates, probably feeling kind of invisible. So the last thing that he can do before he gives up on everything for his career is to like that post and say, I hope somebody sees this. Maybe sometimes it's for bad reasons, but it's still a cry for help.
Mm.
It's somebody saying, please, somebody listen to me. Nobody is listening. So as an individual, if you need to check how well you're listening in your daily life and you're trying to find out how you even can help anyone, take a look at that. See if there's anybody in your network who feels unseen and unheard and doesn't know what else to do. So that like is all they have left. So that's what I would say for an individual.
Yeah.
Um, for a company, I think it's important to model your core values. So every company starts going out there and saying that they respect people. Well, respect isn't just opening the door for someone when they're going through. That's just being a human in society. Respect is about making the space and time for a person. It's hearing why, as experts themselves, regardless of their role in the company, they've made it through their career to the point where they're in a team with you. So, sales team, sales leader, HR person, and another department lead that you're meeting with, whoever it is, you are all bringing your experiences to the table. And to make the space to slow things down and listen and explore without fear so that the core values of your company can actually be modeled. That's really key. A company needs to model that stuff because otherwise you're just saying, hey, we value listening. And then no one listens to you. Just makes everybody more angry. You gotta really lean into it if you're gonna do this stuff.
Show me, don't tell me. How many times do I say that in a day, Curtis?
Oh yeah, quite frequently.
You got any final questions or thoughts for Chris?
No, this has been great. I think there's a lot for me to learn here. I would say these are skills that I've had to learn. Over the years, I managed anywhere from 12 to 20 people at different points in my career. Was I always carving out the space to be a good listener and making time for them, or was I worried about hitting numbers and the meeting that I personally had in 2 days that I was prepping for and building reports for, and those types of things. So it's difficult, and I think seeking a coach to help you with that, seeking an accountability partner, being deliberate about carving out the right time for the right priorities within your day. And if you're not managing people, you're maybe managing customers. You maybe have teammates and those types of things. And you're still, I think, for the most part, most of us are working with other people throughout our day. And so, interacting with those people in an appropriate way, listening appropriately, responding appropriately, and all those things are good skills always to continue to polish up on, continue to make sure you're developing. So it's been great to have you on today, Chris.
Yeah, thank you, Curtis. Thank you, Tom. Really appreciate it. I mean, really, we all have a choice in our day. We have a choice to know how we want to experience the world. Do we want to go through a day where we're just angry, feel invisible, all those negative emotions, or do we want to open up a little bit and then end the day every day feeling good that something good happened? Careers, work, careers, home, everything, right? It's all part of a choice. And we all make these choices every day in how we show up and how we interact with other people to get value for both parties. And I think that if we all kind of raise that consciousness together and that awareness together, maybe these things don't have to be so bad every day. Maybe we all can go to work and enjoy it and know that we helped another human being out.
Love it.
So-
That's a great. Well, go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask Chris if it was a choice that you chose happy behind you on the for the
Happy,
podcast itself. You set up, for those who are listening, you won't understand this, but for those watching, but behind Chris is a picture frame with the words "choose happy" there sitting right behind him. So I'm assuming that was intentional. And is there as a reminder for you as well. So
absolutely, that's the first thing I see when I walk in this room every day and log on, and it's a decision about how I want this day to go instead of worrying about how this day is going to treat me.
Love it.
Get that power back.
yeah.
Take control of how you interact with the world, and a lot of good things can open up.
Cool. All right. Well, my final thought, by the way, if you ever have lunch or coffee with somebody who has been Sandler trained, they're going to ask you, what's new and exciting in your world? And so that's not by luck. So I think that's them training themselves to immediately turn the conversation to one in which the person you're having coffee or lunch with feels like they're being heard. They get to talk about themselves. Everybody's got something new and exciting in the world. Sometimes you got to prompt them with how's the family? Going on vacation this summer? That sort of thing. So that's a freebie. That's one of your 7 questions that you can have. We would ask you
What
to
happens
share.
though, Tom, when 2 Sandler trained people sit down?
They cross their
coffee.
arms and say, "You go first." No, you go first. No, you go first. No, you go first. Yeah. Yeah. Good question. So yes, the immovable object meets the unstoppable force.
Right.
So speaking of unstoppable forces, we are now found at Bullhorns, Bullseyes.com. No and in there. We also have a LinkedIn profile, which we'd like you to follow. And what we'd like you to do for when you're done listening to this episode, go follow us on LinkedIn. But more importantly, in the post that we talk about this episode, enter into the comments what's new and exciting in your world. Tell us. Here's your chance to be heard. And if you'd like to be heard for something even more important or with greater gravitas, put that in the comment. So going back to what Chris said, if you're at your wit's end and you have one last action to take before you lose your mind, tell us what's on your mind. We want to hear. Sound good? All right, everyone. Well, we'll look for those comments on LinkedIn, and we'll see you at bullhornsandbullseyes.com and next time on Bullhorns and Bullseyes, the podcast.